The house stood at the edge of town, shrouded in ivy and silence. People said it had been empty for decades, though no one remembered when it was first abandoned or who had lived there. Its windows were hollow eyes, gazing outward without recognition. Its doors creaked at the wind, but never to welcome. Children dared each other to run across its porch at night, yet none stayed long enough to look inside. For all its stillness, the house felt alive, waiting. Elena had never believed the stories. She was a painter, an outsider in the town, drawn to the house not by whispers of curses, but by the way it seemed to shift in her peripheral vision. Some days it looked grand, its gables rising proudly. Other days it sagged, small and withered, as though time gnawed more greedily at it. She could not resist. One late afternoon, she carried her sketchbook and walked up the overgrown path, ignoring the way the air grew heavy as she drew closer. The door opened without her touch. Inside, the smell of dust and earth filled her lungs. The hall stretched longer than it appeared from the outside, walls breathing faintly, as though inhaling her presence. Her footsteps echoed, and the floorboards shifted like ribs under her weight. She told herself she was imagining it, but deep down she knew. The house was watching. In the first room she entered, she found a studio. Easels stood in perfect rows, canvases leaning against the walls. But when she turned them over, they were covered in her own paintings, one she had never created but recognized instantly. Each canvas revealed her secret fears. Her parents' faces distorted in disappointment, the faces of friends who had left her behind, and finally, herself standing before an audience, naked and unfinished, mocked for her failures. Elena staggered back, heart hammering. The air around her shifted, and the studio dissolved into shadow. Another room unfolded, its walls lined with mirrors. In each reflection, she looked different, happier, more successful, adored. A version of her held a gallery exhibition, another accepted awards, another lived a life she had only dreamed of. For a moment she reached toward the glass, aching to step through, but as her fingers brushed the cold surface, the smiles in the mirrors twisted. The reflections turned, watching her with hungry eyes, lips curling into cruel smirks. She fled, her breath ragged, but the house was not done. Its corridors twisted, leading her where it wanted, not where she chose. Doors closed behind her of their own accord. Every room she entered reshaped itself around her innermost thoughts. She found her childhood bedroom, untouched, the smell of crayons and chalk in the air. Her younger self sat on the bed, staring at her with wide, glassy eyes. "You left me here," the child whispered. "You grew up and forgot what I wanted." Then the child melted into the floor, swallowed by darkness. The whispers grew louder the deeper she went. The house's voice was not a sound, but a pulse that trembled in her bones. "We are you. We are what you will never admit. We are your truest shape." Somewhere, she realized, the house was not simply showing her what she feared and desired. It was dreaming of her. Each vision was not conjured from its own will, but woven from the secret places of her mind. The house lived through those who entered, reshaping itself like a mirror of the soul. Elena reached the last room, a great chamber with walls that seemed endless. A single chair waited in the center. She felt compelled to sit. As she did, the chamber filled with whispers that rose into screams. Figures crawled from the walls. Every lover she had lost, every mistake she had made, every cruel word she had spoken. They circled her, their voices a storm of accusations. Then silence. A figure stepped forward from the shadows. It was her, older, eyes hollow, face cracked like porcelain. "Stay," it said. "If you remain, the house will dream of you forever. You will be safe here, with your fears contained, your desires fulfilled." Elena's body trembled. She wanted to believe it, to surrender, to sink into the comfort of the dream. But then she remembered the paintings, the reflections that had mocked her. Nothing here was real. It was only what the house thought she wanted, what it believed she feared. To stay would be to dissolve into its imagination. With every shred of willpower, she stood and ran. The walls reached for her, hands of wood and shadow clawing at her clothes. But she forced herself through the hallway, down the stairs, out the door. She stumbled into the night, gasping as the cool air hit her face. Behind her, The house was still. Its windows glowed faintly, as though it were exhaling a dream it could not keep. From that night on, Elena never returned. But sometimes, when she painted late into the night, she felt the brush move on its own, tracing shapes she had never seen. In the strokes of color and shadow, she glimpsed the house that still dreamed of her, waiting for her return. And others who entered after her, seeking curiosity or courage, found that the rooms were different. They found their own mirrors, their own ghosts, their own deepest truths. The house never stopped dreaming. It only waited, patient and alive, for its next dreamer. The house did not forget Elena. Long after she escaped, it carried her inside its walls like a memory, reshaping itself in whispers of her fears and sketches of her desires. But the house never belonged to one dreamer alone. It was always waiting for the next. It was Marcus who came next, a man burdened by silence. He had lived his life hidden from the world, carrying guilt he never dared to name. When he first heard the abandoned house on the edge of town, he dismissed it as superstition. But one night, walking home with whiskey in his veins and regret on his shoulders, he saw it in the distance. Its windows glowed faintly, as though calling only to him. Against reason, he followed. The house welcomed him with warmth, though it had never been warm before. The air smelled of cedar and smoke, the way his childhood home once had before the fire. He stepped inside, and the door sealed shut. The hallway stretched before him, endless. He felt no fear, only a strange relief, as though at last someone knew the weight he carried. The first room he entered was a kitchen, bright with sunlight, filled with laughter. His wife sat at the table, alive, smiling, pouring tea. His daughter skipped past him, her hair catching the light. Both had died in the fire, a fire he had caused with a forgotten cigarette. His heart ached, and tears blurred his vision. For a moment, he was whole again, but when he reached to embrace them, the room twisted. His wife's smile froze, her face melting into ash. His daughter's laughter turned to screams. Flames roared through the kitchen, swallowing everything. Smoke clawed at his lungs, and he was back in a moment he had buried for years. He fell to his knees, begging for it to end. The fire vanished. Silence. He was alone again. The next door led to a church, its pews filled with shadowy figures. At the altar, a coffin waited. He approached, trembling. When he looked inside, he saw himself lying still, eyes closed, at peace. For the first time, he felt comfort in the thought of death, as though the house whispered, "This is what you desire most." But then the coffin opened its eyes. His dead self stared up at him, lips curling into a grin. "You don't get to rest. Not yet. Not ever." The body rose, dragging itself in the coffin, bones cracking, skin splitting as it reached for him. Marcus fled, stumbling through the aisles. The shadows laughed, their voices merging with the house's own pulse. "We are you. We are what you dream. We are what you cannot bear to see." The house reshaped around him, twisting corridors pulling him deeper. He fought to escape, but every exit looped back, every door turned him inward. The house wanted to keep him. When he reached the final chamber, he found not fire, not shadows, but Elena. She stood in the center, sketchbook in hand, though she had not truly returned. It was only her memory the house had kept alive. She looked at him with sorrow. "It won't let you go," she whispered. Marcus reached out, but her form dissolved into paint strokes, scattering across the walls. Alone, broken, he collapsed into the chair at the center of the room. The house sighed, satisfied. At last he surrendered. His guilt became its dream. From that night on, those who passed by claimed they saw the house differently. Some swore it had grown taller, darker, its windows burning faintly like eyes of fire. Others said they heard screams in the wind or a man's voice begging to be freed. But no one dared enter again, except the ones who could not resist the pull of their own secrets. For that was the truth of the house. It was not haunted by ghosts of the past, but by the living who stepped inside and left pieces of themselves behind. Each visitor became another dream, another lair, another hunger in its walls. And somewhere within, Marcus still sat in his chair, eyes empty. A man dreamed into silence. The house dreamed of him as it dreamed of Elena, as it dreamed of all who dared to enter. It would never stop, because the house that dreams of you does not forget. It only waits, reshaping itself endlessly, whispering for the next soul to walk its halls. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more haunting tales that will send chills down your spine.